little perennial really took me by surprise. This early blooming spring perennial has been such a gift to me this year. And today in this video, I'm going to be telling you all about Geum. Some people say it differently, but I say Geum. And it really took me by surprise because I was able to sell 820 Geum, or 82 bunches, all by the end of May. That is a lot of flowers very early in the season. From very few plants, from a 3x10 space, from 24 plants, I was able to sell $1,000 worth and 820 stems. So this tiny footprint blooms before peonies hit during Mother's Day. There is no other field-grown perennial that I have that is blooming in this window. So we're going to be talking all about Geum today, what it is, why it's worth the investment, who should grow it, what varieties worked, profitability and production numbers, and a mistake I made. I'm Ruth Ann from Abundant Blooms Flower Farm in Dorr, Michigan. This is my 7th year of flower farming, and I sell almost exclusively now to florists. I also have online educational content for flower farmers, like my course, Selling Flowers to Florists, which is a complete roadmap from not knowing how to sell flowers to florists to completely having the confidence and the understanding and the know-how to continuing relationships and really creating deep, meaningful connections and a sales channel with florists. And that's important for this video because this really, I think this flower in particular, is really for florist sales. I do not know that retail buyers will really buy this. So it's pretty important for this video, just the sales outlet, I think. This dainty little spring flower, Geum, is, like I said, an early spring perennial crop. It blooms during this gap when no other flowers are field-grown perennials are blooming. Obviously, there's things like tulips and daffodils and some bulb crops blooming, but I don't know of any perennial. So to give you a bloom window, it's helpful to tie it to peonies when peonies bloom. So for me, peonies are a late May, early June flower. They really are more of a June flower. It's the 27th of May. We're just harvesting our very first coral charms and early peony bloomers. Now, for some of you in other parts of the country, maybe you can't even grow peonies, but you are way past, your peonies are way done. So just to kind of give a reference, when I say early spring, I'm talking like my Geum started blooming a month before my peonies bloomed, just to hopefully that helps you give a window of when this might start blooming. It was a very compact flower. It just really was a gift. It really just was a gift, the early spring. So I was initially hesitant to grow Geum. I just was like, do I really need another early perennial? People talk about it. Is it really worth the hype? I've heard people talk about it. It's quite expensive for a perennial because most of the good varieties are grown via tissue culture, which makes them more expensive. And so it wasn't until 2024 that I went to an ASCFG regional conference at Clara Joyce Flowers, and I was listening to a talk by Dave Dowling, who of course is such an expert, and I heard him talk about perennials again. He was talking about Geum, and I was like, okay, Dave, and then the other flower farmers that were sitting right next to me were like, oh, Geum, I love it, I love it. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna try it. I guess I'll try it, and I did. So I actually got it from another flower farmer that fall, but this was my mistake. We kind of made the transaction a little late in the fall, and in November I planted it, and I planted 2 different varieties. I can't even remember what the one was, but the one variety completely died. Zero survived. So that was a real bummer because they were not cheap. And I know she had gotten them from Ball Seed and Horticulture, which is a wholesaler, which I get a lot of stuff from. And it just was too late in the season, I think. And then the other variety that I planted was called Mai Tai. And I think I got 32 plants and 24 of them survived. And I still have them now. Yeah, that was a bummer, but just totally was my mistake. I mean, I kind of knew it was late, but you just get busy. So I'm going to just kind of break down some of the expenses. So I just looked on Farmer Bailey, and to get 16 plants from Terra Nova, which are tissue cultured, propagated, there was $106. So for a 32 tray, it would be, 220 almost, 218. So they're pretty expensive for a perennial in my experience, or in my opinion anyway. And then they're seem to be pretty low maintenance. I just irrigate them, fertilize them twice a year, just like I do a lot of my other perennials. So they're in full sun. So those are what like I would consider the expenses. So then I wanted to give you some numbers of like square footage and how many I have. So I grow, the 24 plants that I have are in a 3x10 space. Very small. I lost a few of this Mai Tai variety, but I still have 24 plants. So they're cutting hay behind me, or they're flipping hay. That's not a lot of space. So with perennials, you always have to think, are these really worth it? Because they're only giving me blooms in this short period of time. I'm not getting a reflush. I'm not able to get multiple successions out of, multiple plantings out of them. So like, are they worth their weight? That's always the question. So just to give you an understanding of the footprint. The revenue. These are not large flowers. They're very dainty. And so they're not able to sell for a ton, but they're kind of a special flower. So I sold 820 flowers for just under $1,000. Like, those are like the actual numbers of how many I actually sold and the money that I made. And then so the question is, was I able to sell everything? And I think the answer is yes, I could have, if I would have been able to predict them better. But it's my first year with them, and so I'm always a little slow at the beginning. But I really sold basically everything. Even with that, there was a couple bunches that I had left over one day, and I brought them inside, which was actually amazing, because then I really got to see the plant perform better. So I basically sold everything that I had. You can just sell a surprising number of them from a very small space. So the revenue per square foot is $33 a square foot, or $42 per plant. Now, how old are these? That's a really great question. These were planted in 2024. So in 2025, I got like 3 little blooms, which was fun to kind of see what the plant would look like. And then this is really their very first year in production. So I don't know what next year's going to look like. If they probably will become more robust and give me even more stems. So that's exciting to think about. For me, the real magic is the bloom window. These started blooming the week of April 22nd, and they bloomed, and I sold them through May 18. So about 4 to 5 weeks from this particular Mai Tai variety. Remember, I'm only going off of one variety. And so the big thing here was they hit Mother's Day big time, like hundreds. They bloomed before the peonies, so they were just an extremely valuable field grown early spring shoulder crop, and it helped generate income for me and ramp up the season. So for me, the crop really earned its place because of where it blooms. Now, I also happened to buy more of them last fall, and so I have another variety that it's in its very first year. It's very small. It is giving me a couple of blooms, which, like I said, I really haven't sold, but it's fun to be able to see what the plant will actually look like. Let's just go through harvesting and post-harvest care and that kind of a thing. You want to harvest when the first bloom has opened, and then there'll be more blooms on the stem. So basically the makeup of a Geum is that it's a small spray flower. It doesn't have tons of sprays, but it has multiple blooms per stem, like maybe 5 to 7. So you harvest it when that first bloom has opened, and the other ones are swollen, and they will continue to open, which I can certainly attest to from my own experience of having them in my home. And the secondary blooms that open will be more pale. They won't be the same color. Sometimes that happens with flowers when they're cut and they're opening in the vase. They will kind of change their color because they're not opening in the field. So GM definitely did that, or at least this Mai Tai variety for sure did. Vase life. Okay, I looked at Farmer Bailey's growing guide as I was creating the notes for this video, and he says they have a week-long vase life in there. Now, I will just tell you, different cultivars of different flowers have different vase life. So maybe that's more of a general, vase life estimate. However, these Mai Tais, over 2 weeks. I mean, incredible vase life. My florists were going on and on about how long they lasted and all that stuff. And they were just in water in my bathroom. I didn't change the water. I added to it once. Like, they were just in plain water, and they lasted for over 2 weeks. I was really blown away. And so were my florists. So in my experience, a very long vase life with this particular variety anyways. Post-harvest care, I didn't do anything special. They do want to be harvested in the morning. I harvested some later and they kind of wilted, although I recut the stems and they perked back up in the cooler. At least almost all of them did. But I would definitely early morning harvest. They don't like to be harvested later. They will wilt. I just did the same thing like my regular post-harvest routine. I put them in a CBVN tab, which is like a slow release chlorine tablet in every bucket of water, just like a little pill. And then I put in holding solution, Chrysol #2, Chrysol Professional #2. And that's just, my kind of standard for what I do for most things. So the varieties that I have grown and the ones that I see cut flower farmers talking about is the Mai Tai variety, which is what I have. And that one grows, I was curious how tall they would be because a lot of the Geums can be small, short. And it started out like 12, maybe 14 inches tall. I was like, okay, okay. But as the season progressed, they got taller. They were like 16, and then the last ones I cutting were almost 18 inches tall. I was very surprised. My florists were surprised and delighted with their stem length also. Now, I will say you want to check your varieties because there are some varieties that are too short. So just because it's a Geum, don't assume that you can have taller enough stems for cut flowers. Another variety that is good is called the Tempo, which is the series. I think there's an orange and a yellow, and there's another one too. I have the Tempo orange as my one that I planted last fall. Like I said, everything looks like it survived the winter. I don't know necessarily how tall they are because usually the second year they're taller. Oh, the Tempo variety seems to be blooming later than the Mai Tai. So the Mai Tai was earlier for sure. Now, I don't know if that's just because they're a younger perennial, but it would be nice because the Tempo is still blooming and the Mai Tais are all done. So potentially you could get a longer bloom window with different varieties. Growing wise, I just grow them in well-drained soil, full sun, irrigate them some. They're not heavy. They don't need heavy amounts of water. So just, pretty low maintenance perennial. Spacing about 12 inches apart, and then harvest after the first bloom opens. And for me, after 2 years, they're definitely producing a lot of stems, like 40 per plant. Just in summary, kind of my thoughts about the plant and who should grow them. They seem like a very easy to grow perennial. They are a little bit of a more expensive perennial up front. They just seem like they're really valuable for me in the north here because of their bloom window. And they definitely had a very strong sale impact and excellent Mother's Day crop. So who should grow them? If you already have a strong florist sales outlet, I would say these are really a gem and could be really a gem. The Geum is a gem and they could be really helpful for your crop production. If you're selling retail at farmers markets, I don't know that your customers would really think these are so amazing. They're really kind of dainty, but they're beautiful in event work and wedding work and stuff like that. So I just would definitely consider that when you're thinking about them. Again, I was honestly very pleasantly surprised by this crop after hesitating to add it to my crop plan. I'm really glad it's there. And even with a very small footprint, you can get a lot of plants. So I would love to know if you grow Geum and what varieties you found to be great and how tall they are, and what you've seen to be helpful on your cut flower production. And if you sell them retail, I'd love to know that as well. Otherwise, if you enjoyed this video, I highly recommend that you check out this video I did on Campanula, which is such a great early spring flower, and mine is about to positively burst right in my tunnel right now. So I really think it's a very strong spring crop also, and you can field grow it. So I highly recommend that you check out that video and subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed it.